Welcome back to Digital Dominators. I'm Sooz Young, founder of technology coaching and creator of the Technology Method, and your host for the Digital Dominators podcast, as you already know. So today's episode is a big one. I mean, quite literally. We're going to go a little bit longer today because I've got a lot to share with you and I genuinely don't want to cut any of it. So grab a coffee, settle in, get yourself comfortable because this one is going to be worth every single minute. A few weeks ago, I was in Edinburgh, not for a little bit of sightseeing, although Edinburgh is always really worth a visit. I was there as a moderator and panellist at the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit, the 6th edition. And I came back with pages of notes, a camera roll full of slides, a head absolutely buzzing with ideas, and what I genuinely believe is one of the most important episodes I've recorded on this podcast for a while. So where we're starting, right at the beginning of the summit, I referenced a piece of research from McKinsey, from their Global Institute report published in November 2025. And the stat that stopped me in the tracks was this one. 90% of companies have now invested in AI, 90%, but fewer than 40% are seeing any measurable results from that investment. So read that again. 9 in 10 companies have put money, time, resources into AI, and less than 4 in 10 can actually point to a result that moves the needle. Now, that's not a technology problem. That's not a tool problem. And that fundamentally is what the whole of this summit was wrestling with. Kind of 3 days almost of some of the sharpest minds in this industry, all trying to answer the same underlying question. Why is AI so much harder to land than it looks in the demos? In today's episode, I'm going to take you inside those 2 and a bit days at the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit. I'm going to tell you about the incredible panel I had the honour of moderating on the future of work. I'm going to share the moments from the other sessions that genuinely shifted my thinking, and I'm going to connect it all back to what it means for you in your business right now. And then I'm going to give you 3 things that you can actually do with everything that you've heard. So let's get into it. Right, context, because I think this matters a lot. And I don't want to assume everyone listening knows what this summit is. The European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit is in its 6th edition. It took place at the John McIntyre Conference Centre, which is part of the University of Edinburgh, over 2 days from the 17th to the 19th of March 2026. The theme this year was Harnessing Agentic AI, Conversations That Matter. And in every session, in every room, on every backdrop, behind every stage was a phrase that wasn't just a tagline, it was the editorial thread of the entire event. Human-centric. Now, here's why this matters. There are a lot of AI conferences. There are a lot of AI events. There are a lot of panels where people who have invested significantly in AI tools stand up and tell you how brilliantly everything is going. This was not that. The people in the room were there not to sell a dream. They were there because they are building things that they actually have deployed and that they are trying to solve real problems that come with that. The speaker list included people from Vodafone, Booking.com, Lloyds Banking Group, Raiffeisen Bank across 9 European markets, Uber, Zoom, Carrefour, the Scottish Government and the Publications Office at the European Union. We had legal experts who's been in rooms in Brussels helping to shape the EU AI Act. We had academics with 30 years in computing and AI. We had engineers who built and run conversational AI systems at scale every single day. So when you put those people in a room together when they're not performing for a sales audience, but they're actually talking to each other, you hear something different from what usually circulates on LinkedIn. You hear honesty, you hear nuance, you hear the hard work come up a lot. And the whole concept of the entire event was based around knowledge sharing. And that is why it aligned with me and what we do at Technology Coaching so well, because knowledge for us saves time, knowledge sharing. Humans have to be sharing their knowledge with each other in order to compete with the technology advances that are coming out there. So that was the fundamental context of that event. And that context matters because what I'm going to share with you today didn't come from people predicting a future they haven't seen. It came from people who are living it, who are making the decisions, navigating the failures, and figuring out what actually works. I was at the summit in a specific role. I was there as the moderator for the Future of Work panel, which was titled Humans, AI, and the Skills That Will Shape the Workplace. That session was on the 18th of March, the middle of the day of the 2-day event. And prepping to moderate that panel, kind of doing the prep calls, reading the research, shaping the questions, was in itself one of the most valuable professional experiences that I've had in a long time. But I also attended sessions across the whole summit. I was in the main plenary hall, I was in the breakout rooms, I was taking photographs of the slides, communicating with some of the other speakers and attendees in some of the boardrooms directly with the companies that were there, having conversations in the hallways, all of that. But across all of those different parts that I was at the event, certain things kept coming up, but not in the same words and not from the same people, but the same underlying ideas kept surfacing again and again. And you heard that within the conversations that were going around all the tables and the kind of event space. And I'm going to share what those threads were. One of the first keynotes of the summit was from Hilde Hardeman, the Director General of the Publications Office of the European Union. And she talked about something she called trust by design. Not trust as a compliance checkbox, not trust as a promise in a marketing brochure. Trust is something you architect into the systems before you build it, not something that goes wrong or not after something goes wrong. She described a shift that is already happening in how AI systems operate. We're moving, she said, from AI that is informational, it searches for results, it answers questions, it needs human verification, to AI that is decisional and operational, AI that receives delegation from humans, that anticipates decisions, that initiates actions, that automates entire workflows without a human in the loop at every step. And when you make that shift, the trust focus changes completely. It's no longer about whether conversation output is accurate. It's about inputs, provenance, and governance. It's about who is responsible when something goes wrong, because something will go wrong. And that's not permission, that's engineering reality. This thread kept appearing in different sessions throughout the entire 2 days. Booking.com's presentation on human and AI collaboration in customer service had 5 principles baked into their approach. And the 5th one was, customers always know when AI is involved. Always, with no exceptions. It's not a preference, it's a principle embedded into how they build. It also connected to another session on on-device AI versus cloud AI, where the numbers on consumer trust genuinely surprised me. 82% of people in a 2025 Deloitte survey said that they believe AI could be misused. That's up from 74% in the previous year. Not down, up. And 81% said they worry their data will be used in ways that they are not comfortable with. The conversation around trust is not slowing down, it's accelerating. And here's the part I think is most important for everyone listening. Trust is now a competitive advantage. If you're building anything with AI, whether it's a chatbot, an automated workflow, a client-facing system, the question isn't just, does this work? The question is, do people trust it enough to use it and keep using it? Those are entirely two different questions. This is thread 2. The human skills conversation is getting louder, not quieter. There is a lot of noise right now about AI making human skills redundant, about automation replacing jobs, about the future of work belonging to machines. And I understand why that narrative has traction, because just look at the 30,000 jobs that were lost from Oracle's latest cull that they had. But the data, the actual research from the people in that room, tells a bit of a different story as well. So here's a stat from the Coursera Jobs Skill Report 2026, which was one of the key research sources that I used in the panel. Critical thinking is now the fastest growing human skill across the workforce. It's up 168% in data roles, up 101% in software, and up 185% among learners who are specifically studying generative AI. The more people learn about AI, the more they value critical thinking, and that's not a coincidence. And here's the one that genuinely floored me. For job postings that require AI skills, 8 out of the 10 other required skills are human skills. Not just technical skills, human skills. Communication, emotional intelligence, creative problem solving, judgment, leadership. The jobs that are most AI adjacent are also the jobs that most need the things that machines still cannot do. And Booking.com's second principle for human AI collaboration captured that perfectly. AI for speed, humans for trust. That's the division of labour that most sophisticated organisations are actually operating with. Not human versus AI, humans and AI, each doing what they're best at. This is what we talk about at Technology Coaching and using the technology method, because it's those essential skills, those meta-human skills with the technical skills that are going to help you develop that complete digital mindset. This doesn't mean that the transition between human and AIs is painless. The World Economic Forum says 59% of workers will need retraining by 2030. And one of the practitioners in that room said, quietly and plainly, that the systems for that retraining are not ready. And that's a real problem that I'm not going to minimize. But the direction of travel is clear. Investing in your own thinking skills, your communication, your ability to work with AI rather than being replaced by it, it's not naive optimism. It's a good strategy. Whether you are an employee or whether you are a business leader, you having those skills, those fundamental skills are going to help drive you in your role and your business forward. Thread 3 is Agentic AI is in production, and it is messier than the demos. A lot of the summit was focused on what practitioners are calling agentic AI. AI that doesn't just respond to a prompt, but it takes actions, orchestrates other systems, works autonomously across complex tasks, and operates with increasing independence from human instruction at every step. This isn't theoretical. It's in Vodafone's customer service infrastructure. It's in Booking.com's support systems. It's in the financial services at Lloyds Banking Groups. It's in the Carrefour's data infrastructure architecture. And that's what the people building and deploying these systems are saying with a really refreshing candor, is that moving from demo to a live production environment is hard. Laura Ball from Zoom and Matt Cowell from Accelerate literally titled their session, Agentic AI in 30 Days, What Happens When Theory Meets Production? And the answer, if you read between the lines of what they shared, is you find out very quickly what you didn't know. The gap between what an AI system does in a controlled environment and what it does when it's handling real customers with all the messiness and the edge cases and unexpected human behaviors that the real humans bring is really quite significant. The organizations that are thriving are the ones who expected that gap and planned for it. The ones who are struggling are the ones who thought the demo was the destination. This is thread 4. The real problem is almost never the technology. And this brings me to the thread that I found the most consistent across the entire summit. No matter who was speaking, no matter what industry, no matter what scale, the biggest barriers to making AI work were not technical. They were organizational. And I'm going to share one line from a session I attended that I think perfectly captures this. Ivona Gudeli, conversational AI consultant at Raiffeisen Bank's Conversational AI Lab, AI systems across 9 European markets. And she said plainly, without any fuss, conversational design at scale is not a design problem, it's an organizational design problem. And I'm going to say that again. It's not a design problem, it's an organizational design problem. And what she meant was this. When Raiffeisen tried to scale, every market was inventing its own voice and tone and patterns from scratch. The same use cases were being rebuilt independently in Austria, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Romania, the Ukraine, Hungary, Albania, and Kosovo. No shared design language, every team reinventing the wheel, and nobody really owned that quality. So some genuinely bad conversations were going live with real customers. And the fix wasn't a better AI tool. The fix, interestingly enough, was training and enablement. A governance model with clear ownership and the quality gates and shared playbooks and frameworks that every market could build from. And that was down to the employees to be able to come together to learn and work together. So that was structure, that wasn't software. So that applies to your business, even if your team is 3 people. If the systems you're building with AI aren't working the way that you want them to, the problem is almost certainly not the tool. The problem is the structure around the tool. I promise you, I've seen this again and again in the businesses that I work with, and even with our own business here at Technology Coaching. With the evolution of AI, we are constantly having to update our systems with what the tools are then able to do and how we're working together with across the tools that we're using as a team. Right, let's talk about my panel, because this is where I got to bring everything that I've been thinking about and working on through the Technology method into a live conversation with 3 genuinely exceptional people. And I want to take you through it properly. The session was titled The Future of Work, Humans, AI and the Skills That Will Shape the Workplace. I moderated it, and alongside me on that stage were 3 panelists who each brought a completely different lens. There was Jared Brown. He's the global head of privacy and AI governance at Fexco. He's a philosophy graduate and a qualified lawyer with a master's in privacy and technology law. He's been part of the EU's AI Office General Purpose AI Code of Practice Working Group in Brussels, and he chairs the AI Working Group of the Confederation of European Data Protection Organisations. Jared was one of our governance and accountability lens on the. Martin Krcek is an AI architect at Vodafone, where he leads strategy and implementation for the voice bot Toby and generative AI. He's built and deployed conversational AI at scale, and he's had some genuinely remarkable experiences working with physical AI and humanoid robots, which we got into a bit during the session and which I'll share with you very shortly. Martin's was looking at it from a builder's lens. And then Dr. Kulvinder Panesar is Assistant Professor of Applied AI at the University of Bradford. And she has over 30 years in computing and digital transformation, specialising in AI, natural language processing, and conversational AI. She advises senior leaders on boards And on AI strategy, governance, and the ethical deployment, Dr. Kulvinder was our academic and strategic lens. And what I love about that conversation is that none of them agree on absolutely everything. And that's what made the panel so interesting. And that's exactly what you want in a panel as well, because it wasn't a consensus just for its own sake. It was genuine, informed, respectful conversation and disagreement. So we spent around kind of 45 minutes on 6 core questions. And so I'm going to take you through some of the moments that mattered most from that conversation. Augmentation versus replacement and why the language matters. The first question was about whether AI is replacing jobs or augmenting human work. There has been a huge amount of noise about this, and I wanted to push the panel past the headlines and into the reality. So the data that I opened with was from McKinsey's November 2025 Global Institute report. Today's technology could automate 57% of US work hours. And that sounds terrifying until you read the next line, which is that this is not a forecast of job losses, because more than 70% of skills that are used to both automate and non-automatable work, the same skills that can make you a good at a task and that could be automated also make you good at the things that can't be. And that's fundamentally a different frame. And the World Economic Forum backs this up. So yes, 92 million jobs will be displaced by 2030, but 170 million new ones will be created. That's a net gain of 78 million roles. This story is not about replacement. This story is about transformation, and transformation requires investment in people. And I think this is where businesses are really lacking, because in this post-COVID world, we've all been consumed by a lack of investment in our people, and people are seeing that in their own work environments. Even as business leaders, there's just been a focus on getting the work done because of all the things that have been happening in the world. But when we truly invest in our people, when we invest our time and start to bring training budgets back to the fore and investing in our humans, this is where we can see transformation happen in the business. So I'm going to go back to what the panel were talking about, because Jared raised something during this question, and I think that needs to be said more loudly. He pointed out that many of the high-profile job cuts we've seen recently at large technology companies have been framed publicly as AI-driven displacement. And in his view, which I think is well-founded, is that a significant number of these cases, AI is being used as a justification for cost-cutting decisions that would have been made anyway. And that's not AI replacing humans. That's a leadership using AI as a cover. And those are, again, very two different things with very different implications for how we can respond to that as well. The humanoid robot moment. The second question was about what human AI collaboration actually looks like in practice. And this is where Martin's contribution became one of the most memorable moments of this session. And I wanted to tell it properly because I think it's important. As part of his work at Vodafone, Martin has had some experiences with physical AI, with humanoid robots, not just software systems, physical machines that look and move like human beings. And what he talked about the reactions that people have when they are encountering them. And this is what he described, and it wasn't just a surprise. It was something that had a lot more layers than that. Some people feel instinctive discomfort, a kind of wrongness that they can't quite articulate. Others are really curious and I need to get closer and understand what they're looking at. Some feel a strange kind of connection and almost a kinship that they find slightly embarrassing. And some feel like it's a kind of hard to name what that is. It's somewhere between kind of wonder and unease. And I can relate to that. I was introduced to Sophia, who was one of the first humanoid robots. And I was introduced to her at a Web Summit in 2018. 2019, and it was incredible. So getting to see this humanoid, it was only part of its body, and there is those emotions that you're curious, you're excited, but you're also apprehensive, you're slight unease with it as well. So I think it's a combination of all of those. What Martin was really pointing to, though, is something called the uncanny valley. The idea that the closer something gets to looking human, without quite making it, the more unsettled that we feel. And this matters enormously for AI, because as AI becomes more capable, as it sounds more natural, as it gets closer to convincing human behavior in conversation, the question of how people feel about it isn't just psychological. It's ethical, it's commercial, it's foundational to whether people will trust and use these systems. Because again, back to this trust isn't rational. You don't decide to trust something. You feel it or you don't. And the emotional response people have to AI, whether it's a voice agent, a chatbot, a robot, a humanoid, it's not a secondary consideration to be addressed in the communications plan. It's a primarily design challenge. And if you're not thinking about how people will feel when they interact with your AI system, you're missing that most important variable. Humans in the world of AI, the accountability gap. The third major moment from the panel was Jared's, and this is one that I've been thinking about since the session ended. He called it the accountability gap, and this is what he meant. As AI systems become more autonomous and as they make more decisions and they take more actions, when something goes wrong, humans are still the ones who carry the consequences. The machine made the error, the humans are to blame and they have to answer for that. And the gap between where that accountability lives, legally, practically, and where the actual decision was made, it's not small, it's a chasm. And as AI systems become more agentic and as they become more independent, that chasm is just going to get wider, not smaller. And this just isn't a legal problem, although it is absolutely a legal problem. The EU AI Act, which I'll come back to, is already beginning to address this. But it's also a leadership problem. It's a design problem that we've talked about already. So if you're deploying AI systems that make consequential decisions, you do need that governance structure that are crystal clear about who's responsible and for what. And you need that human oversight, which is meaningful, not just performative. And you need to make people across your organization who understand the tools well enough to kind of catch those mistakes before they become the mistakes that somebody else has to explain. Jared's framing was stark, and I think he's absolutely right. Employees need to be seen as assets and not costs, and AI should be there to empower them and not to replace them with a system that nobody is truly accountable for when it fails. Where do you sit? Kulvinder's 7 archetypes. The fourth thread from the panel was Dr. Kulvinder's, and I gave the audience a framework that I think is genuinely useful for anyone trying to locate themselves in the changing landscape of work. So she drew from McKinsey's research to describe the 7 architects of human AI work configurations. At one end of the spectrum, you have people-centric roles where humans do the vast majority of the work with minimal AI involvement. And at the other end, you've got agentic-centric or robot-centric roles where AI systems or physical machines are doing the primary work with humans in a supervisory or monitoring role. And in between that, there are a whole spectrum of configurations. So people working alongside AI agents, people orchestrating systems of multiple AI tools, AI and physical systems working together with light human oversight. And McKinsey's data shows that about 34% of today's workforce is in a people-centric roles, and about 30% is already in agentic-centric roles, which means The large majority of people are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum right now, navigating some version of what human AI collaboration looks like already. So that's not in the future, this is now. So where do you sit, and where do people in your team sit? Or where do you as a leader of your business sit? Because the answer to that question shapes everything from the skills that you need to prioritize to the systems that you invest in, to the governance structures that you need. And if you're in a heavily people-centric role, you've got time, but not unlimited time. And you're already agentic-centric. The governance and the oversight questions are very urgent. And if you're in the middle, which is where probably most of us are, the question is, are you navigating that space intentionally, or are you just reacting to what's happening? And I think most of us are generally reacting because that's how we're just keeping up with the advances of technology. Cognitive risk, the conversations nobody is having loudly enough. The fifth and final area I want to highlight from the panel is the one I think is the most underrepresented in the public conversation about AI, and that is the cognitive risk dimension. Dr. Kulvinder raised this, and it is backed by research. Over-reliance on AI can lead to a reduced brain activity and learning. So when we outsource our thinking to a machine, when we stop wrestling with the problem, we simply ask the tool for the answer. We don't just become lazier, we potentially become less capable. The neural pathways that develop through effortful thinking need to be exercised. And if you don't stop exercising them, that's atrophy that then appears. And Jared added something to this from a kind of different direction. He talked about the cognitive overload, not just from AI doing too much of our thinking, but from the AI generating so much output, so much information, so many decisions to review and oversee that the sheer volume becomes crushing. Fragmented thinking, mistakes and oversight, the kind of errors that happen not because you're not capable enough, but because you're trying to monitor too many things at once with a human brain that has real limits and lived experiences and human abilities. So both of these are very real, and both of them are already happening in organizations, and neither is going away, which is why the skills of discernment, critical thinking, and judgment are not essentials, they're not soft skills, they're essential skills. They are for your protection against a kind of genuine threat to your effectiveness. So I'm going to close this panel section with the quick fire question I put to all panelists at the very end. If there is one thing organizations should start doing today to prepare for the future of work with AI, what would it be? Martin said, start with what you actually are trying to achieve, not what AI can do, what you need to do, and then work backwards from there. Dr. Kulvinder said, invest in AI literacy at every level of your organization, not just for the technical teams, for everyone who touches the work. And Jared said, build the governance before you need it, because by the time you need it, it will already be too late. So I thought those three answers were perfect. They came from completely different starting points, and they landed in completely different places. But together, they tell you almost everything that you need to know. As a creator, I used to spend hours re-recording voiceovers to get the perfect tone. But finding reliable voice talent, booking studio time, and editing takes forever, and it can break the bank. That's why I recommend 11 Labs. It generates ultra-realistic AI voices and even clones your own, all in seconds. With natural-sounding speech, multilingual support, and seamless text-to-speech conversion, 11 Labs powers podcasts, audiobooks, training modules, and more. No mic required. Ready to level up your audio? Try it free today at allmylink.me/TC11labs and bring your scripts to life with 11 Labs. Now, I want to take you to 5 moments from other sessions across the summit that I have not been able to stop thinking about. And these aren't just interesting, each of them has something genuinely useful to offer for how you think about AI in your work and in your life. So the first one will relate quite well to me and those that know me very well. So it was Omotenashi and what AI still cannot replicate. So Daniel Orenes Fernandez is a customer experience lead at Uber, and he gave one of the most original presentations I have ever seen at an AI conference, and it also aligned very well with me. The title was Omotenashi meets Agentic AI, how Japanese service culture shapes the future of chatbots. And I want to share it with you in some detail because what it reveals goes far beyond chatbots. Omotenashi is a Japanese concept and it means wholehearted hospitality. The idea that you anticipate the need of the person you are serving before they have to express those needs. That you serve them not because it is your job, but because you genuinely care about their experience. It's the or the philosophy behind why Japanese service is so consistently and impressively excellent. Daniel opened with a data point that almost silenced the room. Japan's Net Promoter Score, which is the measure of customer satisfaction and loyalty used across industries worldwide, it's one that we use at Apple, is negative 52 out of 100, negative 52. So in a country where 50% of customers will leave after just one bad experience, the highest proportion of any country surveyed, customer satisfaction as measured by NPS is at the lowest of any country in the data. So why is that the case? Because in Japan, the standard is so high that meeting is simply not expected. It doesn't move the needle. The only thing that changes the score is failure. And here is what this means for anyone designing AI systems that interact with humans. You cannot think about whether the system works. You have to think about what the cultural and the emotional expectations surround that experience. What does the person on the other end actually need? Not just functionality, but emotionally and linguistically. So in Japan, that means understanding something called Niju Keigo, which is excessive politeness. Chatbots that apologize too much, that are too formal, that layer politeness on politeness, sound cold or insincere rather than warm. They trigger discomfort rather than trust. And it means understanding kuki wo yomu, which roughly translates as reading the air. The ability to sense what someone means even when they haven't said it directly. How do you get an AI to do that? Oh, I don't know how they do it, but they're doing it quite well. And it means navigating ai, which is a culturally normal ambiguity that allows people to maintain harmony without ever explicitly saying no. So none of that can really genuinely be automated quite well, or can it really be automated? Because it requires a genuine social intelligence of a kind that machines don't have that ability yet. The lesson, and this goes well beyond Japan, is that the emotional and cultural dimension of human interaction is not a detail to address in version 2, it's the thing. It's the whole point. If your AI system handles the functional task perfectly, but makes people feel unheard, misunderstood, or slightly unsettled, you have not solved the problem. You have replaced one problem with a more expensive one. And I bet just listening to that, if you reflect on any chatbot or conversational AI that you have interacted with and tell me how you feel on that frustration level. Now, if that's you in your context of your lived experience, your cultural heritage, your expression of living in the world, how does that translate to what your customers are feeling? to your team that you're working with. All of these have got to be considered because they are human experiences. Standout moment 2, the Booking.com closing line. Raquel Serrano leads customer service AI at Booking.com, and her session was titled Human and AI Collaboration in CX, a customer service perspective. It was a masterclass in honest, practical, unhyped thinking about how large-scale AI deployment actually works. Think how big Booking.com is and where they are placed across the globe. She talked through their 5 principles for human AI collaboration. Seamless collaboration, where AI and humans operate as one integrated system. AI for speed, humans for trust. Learning with every interaction, where human insight continuously improves AI performance over time. Intent-driven proactively, where the AI anticipates issues and acts before the customer even notices them. And ethical, transparent guardrails, where customers always know where the AI is involved. And I think that's very important. But the moment that I took that photo of the slide, and that I've been sharing a little bit with people and my clients since I got home, was that closing line. She said, the best customer service experiences are not the one with the most AI. They're the ones with the most alignment between people, purpose, and the technology. And that's what we talk about again at Technology Coaching. The sweet spot's the tool in the middle. You've got your actual devices, you've got the technology that you're using, both you and the customer. You've got your people and your team, you've got your customers. The tools sit in the sweet spot of that. So I want you to sit with that, because in a room full of people who build AI, who invest in AI, who have staked careers and company resources on AI, the person from one of the most sophisticated digital companies in the world stood up and said, it's not about the AI, it's about the alignment between the people, purpose, and technology. That's not anti-AI, that's mature AI. And that's what it looks like when an organization has been through the hype cycle and come out the other side with something real and sustainable. And that's a principle that applies at any scale, any business, any level. So standout moment 3 was Raiffeisen and the organizational design problem. I mentioned Ivona Gudeli from Raiffeisen Bank's Conversational AI Lab earlier when I was talking about the big threads, but I want to go into our session in a little bit more detail because there is something in it that I think is directly useful for every business trying to implement AI right now, regardless of whether you're working across 9 European markets or just a team of 5. Raiffeisen's Conversational AI Lab had built AI systems that they needed to scale across 9 markets: Austria, Czech Republic, Croatia, Romania, Ukraine, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Hungary, Albania, and Kosovo. And what happened was exactly what happens in any organization that tries to scale without shared infrastructure and shared standards. Very common, as you know, across large organizations. The wheels came off. Every market was inventing its own voice, its own tone, obviously, different customers, different countries, its own conversational patterns. The same use cases were being built from scratch in every country, and nobody owns the quality across those markets. The results were some genuinely poor quality conversations that were going live with customers, and there was no really system in place to catch them before they did, and that was the feedback that they were receiving. The fix was 3 things: training and enablement, to build a common design language across the whole organization, right? The data they use to be able to develop this, and then enabling their people to understand it more. So there was a governance model with a clear ownership, quality gates and decision rights, and a shared playbooks and frameworks so that every market had real tools to build from rather than starting from nothing every time, right? We talk about this when we're communicating with AI. Context matters. So they also did something that I thought was really clever. They shifted from designing for customer personas to designing for customer mindsets. Instead of describing an archetypal customer, they asked, Is this person in a get it done mindset right now? What are my options mindset? How does this work mindset? Because the same person can move between all three of those on different days or even in every different conversation and in different contexts. So the system needs to serve all of those three states, not just one imagined version of a user. So it's not just about the persona, it's about the behaviors of that persona, the mindset around it. Again, back to humans. So then she said a line here that kind of stuck with me. I took a picture of it, which is why I'm sharing it here. Conversational design at scale is not a design problem. It's an organizational design problem. Structure, not software. Governance, not gadgets. The clarity of who owns what and what good looks like before you deploy anything, not after something goes wrong, right? We all know this. Fire protection instead of firefighting. Okay, standout moment 4 is the value of design. So Ray Allen Taylor is head of innovation at ideabay.ai. He gave a sharp focus session on the value of design, and I've kind of put this design thread throughout this entire conversation. So he opened up with a line that I think is one of those really important things that was said at the entire summit. He said, the common illusion is that AI replaces design, but the reality is that AI makes design more critical than ever. So let me unpack that a little bit more, because I think it's true beyond design. It's true for strategy. It's true for communication, and it's true for leadership. It's true for anything that requires human judgment about what we're trying to achieve and why. AI can generate, AI can iterate, AI can produce at scale and speed that no human can match. But AI cannot decide what good looks like. It cannot articulate the values that should go to guide a design. It cannot weigh the trade-offs between efficiency and integrity. It cannot make the call about what kind of business that you want to be or what kind of experience you want to create for people who buy from you and work with you. All of that is human work. And as AI gets better and faster at the generating, the iterating, the producing, the human work of deciding what to build and why and who becomes more important, not less. If you've been worried that AI might make your thinking, your creativity, or your expertise redundant, Ray Allen's line is your antidote. Standout moment 5, the growth mindset shift and what Scotland is doing. So the final standout moment is actually two things that connects, and I want to share both of them. So Christoph Eslinger is the founder and managing director of IdeaBay. He was also the co-host of the event with Caroline Lawrison as well. And in his remarks at the summit, he made a point that I think is the most important mindset shift for business thinking about AI right now. He said that too many organizations are approaching AI with a cost-cutting mindset. They're asking, where can AI reduce our headcount? Where can it replace an experience or an expensive human process? Where can we trim the budget? And he's not wrong that AI can do those things. But if that is your starting question, right? If you're in a leader and you're starting with how can AI help us reduce our costs so that we've got more profit margins, that's where you're starting in the wrong place. Because the far bigger opportunity, the one that actually changes trajectories, is the growth mindset version of that question. Where can AI help us do things we could not do before? Where can it help us serve customers we couldn't previously reach? Where can it help us compete with organizations 10 times our size? Where can it help support people that humans, again, that maybe can't interact in the same way with the tools that are already out there? How can we design to support humans better? Cost-cutting thinking makes you leaner as a business, of course, but growth thinking makes you different. Okay, I'll go back to that Steve Jobs think differently phrase. And for small businesses, entrepreneurs, course creators, anybody that is creating content, different is not nice to have, it's the whole competitive game. And if connecting directly to this, on Friday the 20th of March, the day after the summit ended, the Scottish Government launched AI Scotland, which is a new programme specifically designed to help SMEs across Scotland implement AI solutions in their businesses. And it launched with an ethical and legal frameworks built in, which was great to hear, and further support structures that are still in development. So if you're based in Scotland, this is something that I'm currently actively researching. It's not long out there, so I'm going to be sharing more about that as I find out more about it. Because if there is funding and support available to get small businesses, get AI implemented properly with the right guidance and the right frameworks, I want to make sure that you know about it and you can access it. There's already support out there from the UK government. It's great to see this happening from the Scottish government as well. Right, we have covered a huge amount of ground, and I don't want to leave you with a head full of information and no clear idea of what to do with it. That is not what Digital Dominators is about. So let me bring this back to you. Wherever you are in your business, whatever size your team, whatever sector that you're in, and whatever your current relationship with AI looks like, here is what I took from the 2 days at the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit, filtered through our technology method and applied to the world that most people listening to or watching actually live and work in. So number one, AI fluency is a non-negotiable skill. So it's not technical AI skills, not knowing how to write code or build a model. Fluency, the ability to understand what AI is doing, to work with it effectively, to prompt it well, to know when to trust its output and when to question it. To use AI not as a magic answer machine, but as a strategic thinking partner. McKinsey's data tells us that the demand for AI fluency has grown 7 times in the past 2 years. 7 times. That's crazy. It's faster than any other skill in any category, in any sector. And the Coursera data tells us that 88% of leaders believe their AI investments will fail without the parallel investment in training in their people. So that's why I'm going back to this. You've got to invest in your people here. So this means that the single most important thing that you can do for your business or in your role right now is not to buy a new AI tool. It is to learn how to use the ones you already have properly. And a huge part of that is learning how to prompt, because the quality of what you get from an AI system is almost entirely determined by the quality of what you put in. Garbage in, garbage out. Brilliance in, brilliance out. Context, data, all the parts that make up the technology method. This is exactly what I've got in the Practical AI Prompting Fundamentals course inside the lab at Technology Coaching. We cover the core principles of prompting, how to get consistent, high quality outputs, how to build reusable prompts that work in your specific business context, and how to think about AI as a partner rather than a vending machine. And it works across all AI tools. We're seeing this across all of the people that are in that space already. So if you're not prompting intentionally and structurally, you are leaving the majority of the value that you're interacting with that tool on the table. The link's in the show notes around this video below. You can go and explore it. The cost is super low, so it's accessible for everyone to get access to. Number 2, think about your workflows, not just your tasks. So this is the message that came up in session after session at the summit. So McKinsey's research is explicit about this. 60% of the productivity potential of AI sits in the workflow redesign. So not replacing one task with an AI version of the same task, rethinking the entire flow from beginning to end. And this is what we talk about, how it works across the business as well, because what we're seeing is that each department's being asked, right? So the web team's being asked to implement AI, the data team, the cyber team, the HR team, all the different areas of the business are using AI, but they're not communicating that effectively together. So this kind of knowledge sharing is super important. Okay, so what does that mean in practice for your business or wherever you're working in, or wherever you're sitting? It means that you actually sit down and map out what you do in your business end to end. And I did this with a customer in our session together one-to-one last week. So we were talking about her tools. Actually, she was looking for a better system, and she's got new team members in different departments. So the task that she's away with is to go and write down what are those processes. And the great thing is that you can use AI to be able to help you work out what those processes are too. So she was away with those skills. But let's think about this from your point of view. So what does this mean, right? Mapping out the entire part of what you're doing in your role or your business. It's not just the parts that feel automatable, it's the whole journey. How do you attract clients, or how do you work with people? How do you onboard them? How do you deliver the service or your product? How do you retain them, and how do you build loyalty? How do you work with other people? What timing and skills work with that? What has to happen before and after these things? It's almost like getting everybody in a room and brainstorming that together. And this is your investment in your people that you can do to work out how the tools can help create and automate some of those processes that allow the humans to be more creative as part of it. This is not an easy thing to do, but it's going to make the biggest impact. And that kind of thinking, it kind of requires you and your business to think at a systems level. So not just a task level. And I know some of you that are listening or watching just genuinely like to show up to work and get your tasks done. But if you want to stay ahead of the game in what you're doing, you want to think about how you could bring critical thinking and improvement to what's happening across your business. And if you are a leader that likes to have control of everything that everybody does, right? We see this a lot from management roles, is that they are a manager and they get to make the decisions. It's got to be their way sometimes, or the highway sometimes. That not all managers, but sometimes this is the case. You've got to think differently as well. If people were coming to you with solutions that could improve the process, think about it. Think about how it's going to work better for the entire team, for the business. There's one thing that we talked about at Apple is, how does the business benefit? How do the customers benefit? How do the team benefit? And that's what you've got to think about when you're implementing these AI tools or processes and systems in the business. But all of this is kind of genuinely hard to do on your own, especially when you are running a business. So if you are a business leader, and what I mean by this is if you are running your own business, or you're at the head of that, and you're looking at how your digital systems and setup work together, I've got a digital setup and systems health check, and it's a structured way of looking at your digital setup and the processes and how they work together. So when you start making changes with AI, or when you're making the right ones in the right order for the right reasons, you can understand that more effectively. It also links into a digital clarity call, and we can see that the customers, or some of our customers now that have been through that, it's this joined up thinking that we're helping them with, because the tools are never the problem usually. Okay, that's in the show notes, or in and around this video as well. Okay, number 3 is invest in your human skills intentionally. Now, I've threaded this out throughout this conversation. So this is not instead of your technical skills. You still need your technical skills, right? So if anyone's seen our technology method, you've seen the 2 sides of the brain, right? The technical side and the emotional side, the human side. That's our 2 sides of the brain. They need to be working together. They're working alongside them. Critical thinking, communication, emotional intelligence, creativity, judgment, all of those essential human skills, they need to have the ability to read the room, the ability to understand what someone needs, even when they haven't said it directly, right? Emotional intelligence is that important part. That only comes from being around other humans, right? That doesn't always come from watching things online or interacting in the online space. So this is really important if you've got a demographic in your team that's got vastly different experiences, backgrounds, cultures, and ages, all of the different demographics that we have within our countries and the teams that we're building. It's important to bring the humans together to understand that. And that comes from creating collaborative experiences to do that. So these are the skills that the research consistently shows are becoming more, not less valuable as AI becomes more capable. And they are the skills that the organizations at this summit, companies with billions of pounds in resources and some of the best technology in the world, said that most need and most struggle with. This is an extraordinary opportunity. It means that the person who combines both solid AI fluency with excellent human skills right now is genuinely rare and genuinely valuable. I said something during the panel that I want to repeat here for everyone listening. The future of work is not robots versus humans, it's humans with robots. The humans who thrive in the future are not going to be the ones who know the most tools. They're the ones who are going to know how to think, how to ask the right questions, how to lead in ambiguity, how to make the call when the AI doesn't know what good looks like. That is you, if you're willing to invest in it. And everything I teach at Technology Coaching is designed to help you to do that exactly in the way that works for you in your business. Not to make you dependent on tools, but to make you more capable, more confident, and more adaptable to work alongside them. That's the core of the Technology method. Right, so we've covered a lot today, and I'm genuinely grateful you stayed with me for all of it. It's one of those episodes that took a lot to pull together, and that's why there's been a little bit of a gap between last one. There's been 2 weeks between these two episodes, but I hope it's given you something real to think about and act on. So before I go, a few things. A huge thank you to the European Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit for having me, to Sydney, to Caroline, for the work that they put into creating a genuinely high quality, high substance event, and for the conversations that made it possible. If you want to find more about the summit or attend next year's or additional future edition, I'll link them in the show notes, because they do have the one in other places across other continents as well. I think there's one in Nigeria as well that Sydney hosts down there. The team were just incredible, and it was just an honour to be in that space full of great people, really curious and interested in knowledge sharing at all these businesses and what they were doing. Please go and find my panelists on LinkedIn: Jared Brown, the Global Head of Privacy and AI Governance at Fexco; Martin Krcek, the AI Architect at Vodafone; and Dr. Kulvinder Panesar, the Assistant Professor of Applied AI at the University of Bradford. They are all generous, thoughtful, genuinely knowledgeable, impressive people. So tell them that you heard them on this Digital Dominators podcast. Again, their information's in the show notes below as well. And also worth finding and following. Go and follow these people, mostly on LinkedIn. They are Daniel Orenis Ferrandes at Uber, Raquel Sorando at Booking.com, Ivona Gudeli at Raiffeisen Bank, Ray Allen Taylor at Ideas Bay, Christopher Eslinger also at Ideas Bay and one of the co-hosts at the event, and Hilda Hardiman at the EU Publications Office. There were so many more speakers at that event, and I couldn't add them all into this podcast episode. If you go and look at the agenda of what was at the event, you'll be able to see all the impressive companies that were there and that we spoke to as well. So every single one of those people that I've mentioned, every single one of the people in that room is worth your time and worth following and worth getting more information from. If you are passionate about understanding what companies are doing to improve their workforce, how they're interacting with AI, how they're supporting their customers better, how they're improving their processes, and go to that event to knowledge share and learn more. Go and connect with them in their online spaces. So, 2 things that you can do from today's episode. If this episode made you think, I need to get better at using AI in my business, the first step is to go through the Practical AI Prompting Fundamentals course inside the lab at technologycoachingonline.com. It will change how you work with AI from the ground up. The link is in the show notes. It's taken from concepts from a few of our CPD courses, and we've just put all the prompting fundamentals in there. It works with any tools. It's a super low cost so that you've got access to the fundamental learnings of how you are working with AI. And then if you're a business owner and what's nagging you is more like, I don't even know where to start with all of this, then we've got the Digital Setup and Systems Health Check at technologycoachingonline.com/digital-health-check. And it's exactly where you need to begin. So those questions that you go through will help you understand your entire digital setup of your business and finding the right starting points for you, where you sit, where you could improve on. The links in the show notes as well below or around this video. You can go and explore them as well. So that's everything from me today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, for watching. I'm always really impressed with all the comments that I get across all of the different channels that you'll see our videos in. I'll see you all in the next episode of Digital Dominators. We've got season 2 coming up. I'm super excited to share all the amazing guests that are coming up in season 2. You've got a few more episodes, just me speaking to help and support you in your business, in your role. So I'm looking forward to those episodes coming out. So just remember, knowledge saves time, and I'll see you in the next one.